You see what I mean? So, okay. Here's a theory. Social media causes depression. Social media causes depression. So let's try to falsify that, right? So we split people into two groups. Put some people to use Instagram for like a month. The other people to not use Instagram for a month, right? Also known as like control and treatment, right? Control being the group that lacks whatever stimulus, right? So no Instagram, that's the control. The other one is what we call treatment. And then at the end of the month, we measure how depressed they are. So let's agree on this fucking like premise, okay? If the levels of depression of group 1 are equal to the levels of depression of group 2, I will bow, and agree, to you, my opposite scientists, that my theory is incorrect. Okay, cool. So let's do it. We run the results, or, run the test or whatever. And then results yield saying that there's no difference in depression between groups 1 and 2. Depression group 1 is equal to group 2. So yeah, Instagram doesn't seem to be really causing depression as much. So even though I really thought that this shit was true, I'm going to, bow on my knee, and the enemy is going to put their sword on my head and bless me or whatever. I will give up on my fucking theory. You see what I mean? This is falsification. I love this shit. It's amazing. This is how science moves forward. We shake hands because we love each other. Okay? Scientists are all in the endeavor of truth.
But the opposite is also true. So let's consider this alternative scenario. Let's say that I found results, that there's a difference between using Instagram and not using Instagram in terms of depression. Then as promised, I'll assume that my theory is sound. And when I reach out to other skeptical peers, I'll say, hey, I found these results. And they're going to go, yeah, that's right. Actually, they're going to agree with it. We reach an agreement. And it's way better now because we agreed beforehand what we were going to do, in case we found either, results.
So here's an important thing that we did here, okay? I had a hypothesis, which I'm going to mark as H1. It's usually what we call the alternative hypothesis, but you'll see why. I have this hypothesis that Instagram causes depression. So I'm going to write it here, okay? What I did is I said, let's not use my hypothesis. Let's assume that we're actually wrong. Let's assume that not only our theory is wrong, let's try to prove the opposite. So there is another scientist who works in another field and does not believe this theory. So let's try to take the stance of that scientist. Let's try to take the stance of my quote unquote enemy, and let's try to prove his point. Introducing the most important fucking concept of sciences ever, the null hypothesis, okay? So with the null hypothesis, I'm going to state the opposite of my theory. So I'm going to say Instagram does not cause depression. And I'm going to do that because it's a humble flex. I am going to show off how humble I am, okay? What does that mean? I'm going to talk to other scientists and I'm going to say, hey man, I know you're skeptical about my theory, but I tried to prove your point and I failed. So I must be in the right direction, or at least not super wrong. I must be at least not super crazy wrong, right? So why do we not say that we're right? Why do I not go and say yeah, bro, my theory, beat yours, you should die? Because first of all, there are two reasons. The first one is that stats never actually reaches 100% certainty. You're going to see that. At best, we reach 99.999999, and that we can never reach 100%, okay? There's a mathematical reason. We're going to touch upon it later. And this is also the reason why every time you see fucking toothpaste or soap commercials, they say, we kill 99.999999999% of bacteria. Because legally, they can't state that they kill 100% of the bacteria. It's not a scientific statement. So that's number one. But the number two is the one that we're going to be talking about today. So reason number two is because we can always critique the methodology. Okay, so the methodology of how we performed the study that we were performing, right? So we can always criticize the methods of a study. So there's just two things. There's validity and reliability. You've probably heard of it. I'll touch upon it very quickly. So validity is a question of, does your null hypothesis actually measure what it says it measures? So one example of a study that has poor validity is this one. I don't know if you guys know, during COVID, there was one of the alternative drugs we're trying to use to treat COVID. There was one of these drugs called ivermectin, and there had been a study showing that ivermectin actually managed to kill COVID, like fucking cells, I don't know what they're called, in a Petri dish. So in a laboratory setting, like they just put some COVID stuff on a surface and they put some ivermectin in it, and it just like killed COVID. So some people concluded that ivermectin is an effective treatment for COVID in humans. But that, you see, with the red arrow here indicates this is not a safe conclusion. The study was not conducted on humans. The study was conducted, in a different setting. So this is not a valid conclusion to take. The study is not valid, okay? So this is one example of validity. Yes. Now, let's look at reliability. Reliability talks about, do you always measure? The question is, do you always measure the same thing in the same way? So a quick example of that is, let's say it is some sort of a scientific study. If you're at home sick and you're trying to get your temperature, trying to measure your own temperature, that's kind of like a scientific empirical study, right? But let's say you're trying to get this temperature using an expired thermometer, okay? And then you reach a conclusion, you look at the results, say, oh, I don't have a fever. Is that reliable? No, that's not reliable, because the thermometer isn't consistent. Maybe if you measure 5 minutes from now, it could be that the thermometer yields like that you do have a fever, but it's not really measuring things accurately, right? So these are the two things that we learned. Another way to look at them is to think of this like continuum with validity, like here, less validity, here, more validity, less reliability, more reliability. And you just look at these targets. This is the classic like image that you usually get to study these things. So reliability is all about, if you have a reliable study, your results are consistently measuring, are measuring things with consistency, right? So it's like if you're playing darts, you're always throwing the darts the same spot, right? Whereas validity is about just having the right target, right? Having the right objective of the study, or conducting the study in a way that you can draw the right conclusion. So ideally, you want a study that's both reliable and valid. So this is what we want. But this is an illustration, and you can see here, like you can pause and read each one of these if you're confused. Yeah, this should be helpful.